So Stuart, we're here ahead of the third roundtable that we're doing in partnership with Burgess Salmon. Had some really interesting, lively debates in the first two. Looking forward to a good session again today. Just want to take the chance now really to reflect on those first two and how they've gone, what's happened and what you kind of have taken away from some of those really.
Sure, it's good to be back. I think the first one we had was actually in this office last February 2023. And then we spoke again in Edinburgh last September. Really, I guess for me, and interested if you agree with this, but for me, there's a lot of challenges in the market that we're a far way away now from where I started off, where there were a huge amount of PFIs, PPPs coming through the market. We're past that. I don't think we're ever going to see one model being so predominant and producing so much work over a period of time as we saw then. And there's challenges now as well. PF2, PPP, PFI, whatever you want to call it, that's currently off the table. It will be interesting to see if in a year or two, if it's back on the table, if it's one option of many that people looking to procure assets will have. But for the moment, it's off the table. But that doesn't mean it's gone away. There's a lot going on in terms of people looking at handback. It's obviously a big debate and what we're going to touch on when we speak later today on operational assets and how that's working, how relationships are forming and progressing, and particularly post the White-Fraser report. So there's lots going on. There's also lots of positivity that despite the challenges, people in the market, and we had it in both round tables, people came away feeling positive. There's a lot of capital that can be deployed for the right deal with the right structure. And that's there. There's a bit of a role for government there to provide some form of framework, some leadership and some pipeline as well to get us there. But people are genuinely keen to invest in the market. It's a competitive market. There's lots going on elsewhere. You only need to read Partnerships Bulletin to see what's happening in Saudi and places like that. So, we are up against some competition, and we have to remember that both in terms of deals to invest in, but also in terms of talent and making sure we have the right people in the market in the UK.
Yeah, and I think that point you made about leadership there from government and government entities, that really came through actually in the first roundtable we did, where a lot of the conversation was around the fact that, particularly in the net zero arena, you're talking about a whole lot of different models, a whole lot of different types of infrastructure that we're not used to perhaps as an asset class. And the need for there to be a bit more leadership from government around where they go and what they put their money into. And I think that sort of really came through for me.
I think that's right. There's some really good examples, of what government has done, because it's quite easy for people to have a go at government and say, well, you're not doing X, Y, and Z. But actually, when you look at things like contracts for difference, what's going on in electric vehicles, or you could argue that more should be done there. There's a lot of things that government are doing well. Things like the school estate in the UK, we've obviously seen BSF, and the secondary school estate is up and running. There's some great examples of BSF working, but the primary school estate, that still needs work, still needs upgrading. Be interesting to see how that's deployed as well.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably hear more about that today, and how this session today is going to be more around the operational phase and around taking the lessons we've learned from 20 odd years of PFI and other types of model, and how we bring those through. I think that'll be really interesting to see, won't it?
And I think what's interesting about today is it's a really great cross-section of the whole community in project finance. We have the IPA are coming along. We've some public sector bodies, we've investors, we've project managers, and we've also some advisors on the PPP public sector side as well. And I think that's going to be a nice debate, particularly post White-Fraser. I mean, obviously we all know stories from both sides of the public and the private sector in terms of projects that haven't worked well, whether that's because people are maybe being too aggressive in the interpretation of a contract, whether it's people not getting the self-reporting completely right. And we hear about these bad examples, but I think there's also good examples of what has worked in PPP and what we can maybe take forward into whatever models follow that. But today is certainly going to be an interesting chat because White Fraser's come out. I'm interested to hear, have we seen behaviours change since that happened? I'm interested to hear the IPA's view on it because I don't think they've actually come back yet with their formal response on that. So I think that will be an interesting thing to see as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose really sort of following on from that as well is the question around what comes next. So, you talk to investors, you talk to the public sector, and again, actually from the Edinburgh event, I think something that really came out of that was this sort of feeling that there's not actually that much money. There's no money to do anything radically different. We had that kind of view coming from the public sector. We also had it from investors at that time, sort of saying, well, the environment at the moment is such, inflation is in such a position, etc., that it's really quite difficult to make the case for investing in some cases. So that's a big constraint potentially.
It is, and I remember that in Edinburgh as well, that the example was given that when PFI initially came into the market in the 1990s, at that point there were capital constraints there. People knew that in 5, 10, 15, 20 years' time, that would not be the case. At the moment, there are capital constraints, and it doesn't look as if that position is going to change, certainly in the medium term. And you're right, that poses great challenges, both in terms of new projects coming to the market, but also in terms of, for example, inflation-linked PPP schemes in the health sector. That's a real challenge for the public and the private sectors to try and make that work. And what I think we need, and certainly at the Edinburgh Roundtable there was positive feeling around the table on this, is we need the public and private sectors to work better together and actually find a way to do things that are innovative, that really work. Good examples are things like private finance for new rail stations. We've just done an electric buses deal that's had the UK Infrastructure Bank money in there as well, and I think their role in the market's a really interesting and positive one. I think they can really crowd in investment to all levels of the capital stack. So there's good stories out there, but you're right, there's quite a lot to be done.
Yes, yeah. It'll be interesting to see again, bringing almost full circle really today around that collaboration aspect and trying to get those different parties to come together and find solutions. So in Scotland as well, the Edinburgh Roundtable, we had the UK Infrabank there, we had the Scottish Bank as well there, talking about how they can help and be part of the solution. So there are different options out there, as you say. It's not PFI or bust as was once the case.
Exactly. And I think what's really good there is UKIB and SNIB. The team there, they're people that they've experienced in both the public and the private sector. They know what it feels like at all these different positions on a deal, and they're very positive and keen to do things and to, they are banks, but to take some perhaps more risk than a commercial bank might take to try and get some of these deals over the line. And I think when you look at things like offshore wind and how that market's developed, that's the sort of impetus that we need again to get the net zero agenda going in the UK. So I think they play a really key role in making sure that all that happens.
Yes.
What about you? Where do you think the UK market's going to be in 5 or 10 years' time compared to where we are now?
Well, 5 or 10 years is a long time, isn't it, when you look at what's happened in the past year since we started these roundtables. But certainly I think you look at, upcoming election, that could have a big bearing on where we go. We all know that Labour in particular have been talking a lot about bringing in the private sector in specifically the infrastructure space. So I think things could change quite rapidly potentially, depending on the election result. But regardless of that, you look around the country, you look at local authorities and what they're doing, on regeneration projects and joint ventures, and there's still so much work that is being done in partnership with the private sector. So I think there won't be no let up in that either, but it'll be interesting to see, I think particularly around, as you said, there's sort of net zero agenda, how that develops, because A, it needs a huge amount of money, and B, it needs a huge amount of impetus. And if we are going to meet these deadlines around net zero, then things need to move very quickly, and there needs to be money behind them.
Absolutely. But it sounds like you're positive.
Yes, I think so. I think there's still plenty of opportunity there, and I think there's a private sector that's actually willing and ready to invest as well. And despite what we just talked about, from the conversation in Edinburgh, things have changed in terms of the market. Things have changed in terms of inflation, where we were 12 months ago, even less than that. So yeah, I think there are reasons to be optimistic around what's coming around the corner. So I'm really looking forward then to see what comes out of today's session as well. I think it'll be really interesting.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for everything you've done in the last two. I have a feeling this will be a really interesting one, so absolutely looking forward to it.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.